Sehr geehrte Damen und
Ladies and
Herren,
gentlemen, when we talk today about the energies of the future, then of course this debate today also is against the backdrop of the cruel war, the cruel aggression of Russia against Ukraine. And it is our topmost priority as the federal government to help the people in Ukraine and to also make a contribution by sanctions, by diplomatic efforts, to make this war end as soon as possible. This war, once more, at the same time, also shows us one thing. That is how vulnerable we are and how dependent we are as a society, as an economy, on fossil imports. This becomes particularly clear when it comes to energy supplies. And of course, the existential question of war and peace is these days predominant in political debates and policy making. However, this doesn't mean that we should forget or lose track of other crises because they are no less urgent. The climate crisis and the large-scale extinction of species jeopardize the very foundation of our lives, our natural foundation, our supply, our economy, and the foundation of our society, of our cohesion. Both of these crises continue to be exacerbated with every day that we hesitate or fail to take action. And that is why it would be most counterproductive, it would be wrong to consider tackling them now as a seemingly secondary issue. This war is challenging many things that we took for granted, and it raises old questions we must now address with new urgency and with a new dimension. What does this also mean? Many of the responses we had continue to be sound. Germany's decision to become climate neutral by 2045 is therefore still sound. The federal government took office with the pledge to replace fossil fuels. In order to counter the climate crisis on the one hand and the global scarcity of raw materials, the raw material crisis on the other hand. It continues to be true that tackling the biodiversity loss is linked to the climate crisis. It is just as existential, although in political debates it is only addressed afterwards. Regarding the shift of our country towards a climate neutral and sustainable economy and society, our only response can be that we double down on the social ecological transformation more resolutely. And we must not solidify a status quo that has long been outdated. Exiting nuclear and coal, and also in the medium term, oil and gas, continues to be the right thing to do. This government took office with a coalition agreement, the pledge to make our country fit for the future of our children and grandchildren. We have now set the course. It is now time to act and not to hesitate. And with all the urgency, we must also ensure that we prevent social upheavals in this process. There can be no simple one-dimensional solutions to these complex challenges, of course, and they are also not worth striving for, because the best measures are those that address several crises at once. Energy supplies, climate stewardship, the sparing use of resources, and biodiversity conservation, all of these are intrinsically linked and must therefore be considered as one. We must tackle these crises together. All of these complex issues are linked to our security, the security of our economy, our society, of securing our prosperity and securing the basis of our livelihoods. And that is why I, as the Federal Minister for the Environment, will be committed to tackling these environmental crises even more decisively. I want to mention 4 examples of what the Federal Ministry for the Environment is doing to this end. First of all, renewables represent a solution, and it is a solution that allows for a quick switch and phase out of fossil fuels as opposed to other solutions. This is affordable and sustainable. And that is why a sharply accelerated expansion of renewables is key for the federal government in order to deal with the current crisis and also for the ecological transformation as a whole. This requires efficient and streamlined planning and approval procedures. I attach great importance to the fact that despite all the acceleration, we must not forget nature and biodiversity conservation. I mentioned the crisis of biodiversity loss. It is just as existential as the climate crisis, and that is why we cannot pit these 2 crises against each other. In fact, we must tackle them together. What's decisive is that we balance interests. We want to give a legally secure and rapid approval procedure, and we must reconcile these 2 aspects with one another. Shortly, I will join Federal Minister Robert Habeck in tabling joint proposals. A new biodiversity program will be a part of these proposals. It will help us protect species and nature that is particularly affected by the expansion of renewable energies. A second aspect I would like to mention: dependencies do not only exist with a view to energy supplies, but also regarding many raw materials and within supply chains. This reliability and stability and this stronger interdependence also imply resource efficiency and a circular economy. We must be able to extract resources in the most sustainable way possible, using them sparingly and efficiently, and keeping them within the cycle for as long as possible. In nature, there is no waste. We should follow this example by designing products from the start in such a way that they don't become waste the next day. To do that, these products must be long-lived. They should be reusable and repairable, and therefore also make a contribution to climate change mitigation. The concept of waste is not something we should use in the way we think and act. Whatever cannot be used for its original purpose can be used as a secondary raw material for another purpose, and it can be used in another product. This is good for the environment, and it is also a contribution to a resilient and crisis-resistant economy. The federal government will table a strategy for the circular economy to this end. We want to take key steps away from the throwaway society, for example, through the right to have a product repaired. We want to underpin this, for example, with a new support program, repairing instead of discarding. All of these things will be in line with the European directive to this end. This example also shows that it is worth addressing crises holistically. Studies by the International Resource Panel have shown that roughly half of all global greenhouse gas emissions, as well as 90% of our biodiversity loss and water scarcity are due to raw materials and extraction and processing in one way or another. A smart and sparing use of raw materials with everything that we are using within our economy, that is good for our security and also good for our biodiversity. In addition, it is good for our water resources. It makes our economies more resilient to crisis. And thirdly, the transformation of our economy and society also includes working with nature, not against it. And that is why I want to focus a lot more strongly on nature-based solutions. Aside from renewable energy sources, bogs, soils, meadows, and forests are important components to mitigate climate change. They are capable of binding atmospheric carbon and then storing it in the long run. And they can do that more efficiently the better their condition is. And they can fulfill their climate change mitigation function. At the same time, intact ecosystems are also more resilient towards the impacts of the climate crisis we can already feel in Germany or in Central Europe, just like elsewhere in the world. They are more resilient against these negative impacts, such as droughts and heavy rainfall. And, of course, I have to say that as the minister in charge of nature conservation, they are also beneficial for nature, for biodiversity. Yesterday, I presented the core aspects of an action program for national climate change mitigation, which will be a key pillar of my work. We will make 4 billion euros available over the next 4 years, which is a paradigm shift in our work with natural climate change mitigation and nature-based solutions. It is a quantum leap for building up, preserving, and protecting carbon sinks in Germany. A fourth aspect I want to mention. Policies for the future also include preparing for the impacts of the climate crisis that we cannot prevent. I said it before, global warming has also reached Germany and Central Europe. Of course, other parts of the world are also severely affected, even more strongly affected than we are. The most recent report by the IPCC gives a very merciless account of the status quo. We have to admit that Germany has not been well prepared enough for this. I want to change that. The federal government wants to change that. We want to have a sound basis for adaptation and precaution. Our ministry is supporting an immediate action program, and we are supporting the federal states and the municipalities in Germany to develop tailored adaptation measures. This needs to be different in each municipality, and we need to adapt it to the local framework and conditions. Parallelly, my ministry is working on a climate change adaptation law and a climate change adaptation strategy. We will also ensure a permanent funding scheme with clear rules for responsibilities in terms of funding between the federal states and the federal government, so that we can have a systematic and blanket adaptation plan. Ladies and gentlemen, the solutions that we pursue in environment and climate protection help us to fight the climate crisis and also the loss of biodiversity. But they are also helping to reduce dependencies on certain resources and raw materials, and they protect our natural livelihoods. And in that sense, nature conservation and environmental protection are good for preventing crises and are part of our security policy. There has been a long tradition in environmental policy of thinking in interrelations, starting maybe with the report on the limits to growth, the discussion on the term of sustainability, and the 2030 agenda. I want to continue this tradition by advancing the socio-ecological transformation of our country. And I am delighted about everyone who wants to support me in this endeavor. I am very confident that we will be able to pursue this process if we do it resolutely enough. Thank you very much.